Okay, good morning, everybody. Great to see all of your smiling faces again. Welcome to the Sentencing Commission. I'll call the July 29th, 2020 meeting of the Sentencing Commission to order. I was reflecting back a little bit. This is our 5th meeting since our new director was appointed and our 8th meeting of the interim. The statute requires us to meet quarterly. I'd say we're way in advance of that requirement. Thanks everybody for being available today. Just as a reminder, if you are going to speak, you need to state your name so the record identifies who you are. It's also helpful in this virtual format that you're on mute until you are prepared to speak, and we'll do the best we can to make sure that everybody gets an opportunity to weigh in and comment. So Director Gonzalez, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Arascata, Ms. Jones-Brady, Chief Carpenter.
I'm here.
Director Daniels.
I'm here.
Chairman DeRico.
Here.
Judge Freeman.
I'm present.
Mr. Hicks. Mr. Imlay.
Here.
Sheriff Logan.
Here.
Mr. Marsh. Mr. McCormick.
Present.
Ms. Moll.
Present.
Dr. Neighbors.
Here.
Mr. Ponder. Dr. Salisbury.
Here.
Judge Villani. Assemblyman Hambrick. Assemblywoman Wynn. Senator Cannizzaro.
Here.
Senator Pickard. Vice Chair Callaway.
Here.
Chair Hardesty.
Present. Please mark Mr. Arascata and Mr. Hicks as excused. They are in court hearings in Washoe County.
Thank you, Chair. We have 13 members present. We have a quorum.
Okay, great. As we must and we should mention public comment and open agenda item number 2 to address public comment. There are 2 periods of public comment for this meeting, one at the beginning of the meeting and again at the end. We'll handle this period of comment in the same manner we have in the past. That is, we have circulated, staff has circulated by email the public comment that has been submitted thus far. I believe you should have received an email last night, members, showing, I believe, 13 public comments. If you haven't had a chance to review those, we'll take a moment for people to do so. And during this time, the staff will put up a sign to communicate to the public that the commission is currently reading public comment and the names of those who've submitted public comment. Within 3 working days, the staff will post on the public comment that's been received on their website, on the Department of Sentencing Policy website. So let's pause for just a few minutes and then we'll canvass the members of the commission to see if anyone needs additional time to review the public comment that was circulated. First of all, Ms. Brady, are you with us today?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you. Do any of the members of the commission need additional time to review the public comment that was circulated before the meeting? All right, seeing none, then we'll move on to agenda item number 3, the minutes of the meeting of June 24th, 2020. Are there any edits or comments or corrections to the minutes? If not, the chair would entertain a motion.
So moved. This is McCormick, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. McCormick.
Darren Emley, second.
All right, thank you, Mr. Emley, for the second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Is there any commissioner who's opposed? Thank you very much. They're passed. Before we get into item number 4 of the agenda, I have a question for the commissioners. We have 14 members present. While that's an ample quorum, it's not plentiful. I want to make sure that all of the members of the commission will be able to stay with us at least until maybe 11 o'clock so that we can get through the primary purpose of this meeting, which is the report we need to submit to the legislature by August the 1st. Does any commissioner have a scheduling issue that would cause them to leave the meeting before 11 o'clock?
Yes, Justice, this is Scott Freeman. I have a 10 o'clock this morning. I was planning to do that 10 o'clock, then get back online.
Okay. Anybody else?
Your Honor, this is Christine Jones Brady. I have a 10 o'clock as well.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I take that back. I'm good. They just moved it. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, good enough. Saved by the bell. Anyone else who would have a scheduling problem before 11?
Your Honor, this is Russ Marsh. I just wanted you to note I signed in when you were taking attendance. So you have another member.
Thank you very much, Mr. Marsh. Appreciate you being here. Senator Canizero, I know that your schedule is just utterly chaotic, I presume anyway. Are you good to go till 11?
Thank you, Justice. I should be good to stay on until 11, barring any unforeseen circumstances.
Okay, thank you very much. This has been one heck of a month for our staff. I cannot begin to thank them enough, both of them, for all of the work that they've been doing. I have thoroughly enjoyed interacting with Victoria and Sherry, working on the drafts, and as you might imagine, there's been an awful lot of discussion about the reports and then preparing for this meeting and the like. So I'm going to ask Director Gonzalez to provide her report to the Commission on the numerous things that are taking place. As you know, she's statutorily required to report to the Commission regarding the functions of the department. And so she'll now present her report. Victoria?
Thank you, Justice Hardesty. I'll get my PowerPoint up. Thank you again, and thank you to the commission. Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for everyone being here. The support of this commission is, and the activity of this commission is really what interested me in this position in the first place, and you have not disappointed in delivering, and it is truly an honor to work with all of you, and I'm really excited to present the progress that we're making in just a short amount of time since I've been appointed. I wanted to share specifically some details related to the infrastructure of the department. As many of you know, each state agency has a strategic plan to guide the activities of the agency and measure the outcomes and productivity of the agency. A strategic plan is used to guide our budget building as well, which we are in the midst of right now. We will revisit this plan each biennium as we determine the resources we need and how we can efficiently and effectively use those resources to advance the mission of our department. Our strategic plan is to be reviewed and updated every 5 years. This strategic plan has various components, some of which I will now share with this commission. And upon request, I would be happy to share that strategic plan in its entirety as well. First, on slide 2, you can see the vision, the mission, and philosophy I have designed for the department. This vision, mission, and philosophy is based on the statutory duties of the department as well as the commission. To advance our mission, I have identified 7 core functions and priorities which will govern and organize the activities of our department. These are listed here on slide 3. You can see there's an administrative function, a budgetary function, commission, AB 236, a report function, a legislative function, and an outreach function. That yellow, I didn't realize how that yellow was going to show up on this slide. And
Director Gonzalez, this is Emily Salisbury. Apologies, I'm not seeing your PowerPoint. Just FYI,
Okay.
on the
Thank you.
meeting.
Let me try that again. Thank you so much for letting me know. All right.
We can see it now. Thank you.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. All right, so I'm going to move. You have the materials. Thank you so much. So now moving on to the priorities on slide 4. Let's see. Our vision, mission, philosophy, and all advance. So these are the priorities I've identified for each of the core functions to help provide our priorities and help explain those core functions. I'm not going to read these because you can see them, but I'd be happy to, as we move on, answer any questions we have about these. But every time that, right now it's just Sherry and I, but any staff of the department that we are assessing our activities or trying to identify what we should be working on, everything we do in the department fits in one of these 7 priorities. Additionally, on a weekly basis, I provide a report to Justice Hardesty, and my report is based on these 7 core functions as I organize what we are doing each week. Additionally, we hold weekly staff meetings, which are organized by these core functions and priorities. If I could just ask the members of the commission to please mute, we're getting a little bit of feedback. So I just want to mention that these core functions and priorities are tied to a core function of the state as the governor has identified. He has identified his own core functions and priorities, and each agency must tie their activities to one of his core functions and priorities, and our core functions and priorities are tied to the governor's priority to improve safety, security, and justice in this state. The next component of our strategic plan that I would like to share with the commission is our goals and performance measures. These are important to the budget building process to measure our outcomes and how we are performing, and also to determine what resources we need. As you can see on slide 5, these are the 3 primary goals I have identified for the department, and these are the first performance measures that I have identified. In our strategic plan, there are details about the percentage of these that we'll be tracking each year for the next biennium. And we're going to use these as we not only determine what we're spending and are we spending it efficiently, and then in the future, when we seek enhancements, we'll use these performance measures as well to determine what else does our department need in order to advance our vision, our mission, and our philosophy. Next, I will provide an update regarding the budget of the department. As you all know, we were asked to make cuts to fiscal year 20. There was a hiring freeze and a spending freeze. While the fiscal year closes at the end of end of August, we estimate right now that we will have to revert almost $200,000 back to the general fund as a brand new department and in lieu of the pandemic. Additionally, as you all know, we were asked to make about a 19% budget cut for fiscal year 21. Because 91% of our departmental budget is personnel, our cuts came from vacancies. As this commission may recall, the department has 2 positions which have remained vacant, the Administrative Assistant 2 position and a Staff Attorney position. Therefore, I decided to spread out the harm a little and keep the Administrative Assistant 2 position vacant until at least August of this year, and the Staff Attorney position vacant until March of next year. Additionally, there are various items which the department will need that were not built into our budget. These include the lack of funding for renting a copier printer, a cell phone for me and our staff attorney, research programs like Westlaw, certain costs we need to pay our EATS costs every year to manage the IT of our department, and other costs related to being able to operate the department on a day-to-day basis. It is unclear what is going to happen to our base in the upcoming biennium. However, at this point, I am moving forward as if our base will remain the same. And I'm going to request certain enhancements to take care of those costs that I just mentioned that weren't specifically built into our budget. I am also going to request an enhancement for that the position of the AA4 be reclassified to a Management Analyst 1. This reclassification would provide the support we need for managing our fiscal activities independently and assist in the collection of data required by AB 236. Next, I will provide a brief update on the data collection that is required pursuant to NRS 176.01343. As this commission may recall, the department is required to collect and assess data from parole and probation, from the Department of Corrections, and from RCCD. The purpose of the duty of the commission is to track and assess those outcomes based from the enactment of AB 236. I meet with each of these agencies monthly just to check in, and I have meetings scheduled with each of them in August to discuss their progress of the data. The agencies are planning to submit data to the department by October 1, and I will present the data we receive at the October meeting of the commission.
The 18th is here. Put him in my bedroom, please.
And then if I could again ask the members of the commission to please mute. We're getting a little bit of feedback. Specifically, next I'd like to provide an update on the outreach function of the department as identified as one of the 7 core functions of the department. It wasn't long after I was appointed to this position as executive director, I began receiving mail and phone calls from the public and inmates. I received my first phone call on January 17th and my first letter on January 23rd. As you recall, I was appointed on December 13th. And this is when I was still borrowing office space at GFO. I had only been appointed about a month and they found me. What I will present next is a summary regarding those letters and phone calls. We average 3 to 5 phone calls a week from the public and inmates. These calls include questions about AB 236, requests for support to address issues in individual cases, or wanting to express their support or opposition on certain issues. While I clarify that we do not offer representation or legal advice, these individuals want to share their stories and concerns. Currently, I do not have detailed data regarding the phone calls, but we have implemented a procedure where we will set aside time each week for me to receive and return these phone calls. We will now be able to better collect data, and I can report that information to the commission in the future. As far as the letters go, we received our first letter about a month after I was appointed to this position, as I mentioned. In total, we have received over 176 letters. Some of those letters are from the same individual. So if I break those almost 200 letters down, at least 147 individuals have emailed or have sent mail to the department. 134 of those individuals are inmates. 13 of them are from members of the public. So that means 26 of those letters that we've received, at least 26 or 30 of those letters are letters from the same individual, or the same, more than 26 of those letters are repeat letters, meaning that some of the individuals have sent multiple letters. As a breakdown by institution, 6 of the inmate letters have come from Ely. 18 have come from Florence McClure. 9 have come from High Desert. 35 from Lovelock. 15 from Northern Nevada. 35 from the Arizona facility. And I will note that all of those were a form letter where they filled in their name. But 35 inmates from that facility sent us a letter. And that form letter included just general recommendations to reforming the criminal justice in Nevada. And they wanted us to look at California to changing some of our reforms. Southern Desert, we received 13 letters. Stewart Conservation Camp, 1 letter. Warm Springs, 7 letters. I also want to point out some of the repeat issues that I've received, not only from the inmate letters and the letters from the public, but also phone calls from the public. I've received at least 21 letters asking, expressing support for making AB 236 retroactive, and I've received multiple calls. Like I said, I will collect that data. I would guess we've received at least 10 to 20 phone calls that just want to express their support for making AB 236 retroactive. At least 47 of the letters we received have individual requests seeking help with their individual cases, whether it's about programming or seeking release or other assistances like that. About 6 of the letters mention concerns about the habitual criminal statute. There are more, but those letters are very specific about what they wanted to address. I received 4 letters mentioning NRS 193165, which is the use of a deadly weapon and the imposition of an additional penalty. I also am receiving multiple phone calls about that issue as well. And I wanted to mention too that 9 of the letters we received are in response to the COVID-19 crisis. I want this commission to know that I read every single letter. We track information for each letter, and we respond to every first letter. So every first response from an individual. Sometimes we respond with a form letter. Other times I'm able to take the time and write a more individualized letter depending on the time that we have available. But everyone gets a first response. These calls, letters, and the submission from public comment are an indication that the public sees the department of this commission as a resource and platform to express concern and support for issues related to sentencing and corrections policy. I am cautious in my communications. I want to assure this commission. I make sure that everyone knows I am not providing legal advice. I still worry about my phone conversations and written communications being mischaracterized. To that end, I would invite any recommendations on how this commission would like the department to handle these calls and letters. When I was appointed, I was not expecting this type of interaction with the public. I welcome it, but I also want to be sure I'm advancing the intention and the mission of the commission and the department. I would like to know how the commission prefers that we handle this interaction. We could reduce our interaction, we could increase our interaction. I've included tracking, I've included, as you recall from the performance measures I identified, we're going to track our interaction on our performance measures because we may find that we need to enhance the budget either by resources or personnel in order to handle this activity with the public. If this commission wishes, I can also provide detailed updates like the one I provided today, include more or less detail as this commission prefers. Next, I will quickly provide an update about the Nevada Local Justice Reinvestment Coordinating Council. AB 236 requires the establishment of the Nevada Local Justice Reinvestment Coordinating Council. The purpose of this council is to address the concerns and needs in counties regarding behavioral health programs and treatment for incarcerated persons. Also the needs in counties regarding behavioral health programs, also the council will administer any funds it receives in the form of grants to counties throughout the state. Due to the COVID-19 crisis, I have not been able to get the council members appointed from each county. However, despite that, as these public entities are learning how to hold these meetings virtually, I have now requested to appear on the August 28th meeting of the Nevada Association of Counties to present information about the council and invite appointments from each board of county commissioners. Additionally, in my research, I have discovered the regional behavioral health policy boards that represent 5 different regions throughout the state. I would recommend to this commission that the council coordinate closely with the regional health policy boards, not only in terms of determining appointments for each of the counties, but in doing this, in the activities of the council, if they coordinate their activities, we could conserve resources and not duplicate efforts, and really focus on the needs of the incarcerated persons who are being released and need support upon release. If this commission wishes, I could initiate contact with each of the regional policy boards and maybe even coordinate appointments with them and with the boards of county commissioners as I am on the agenda for August 28th. Finally, I will present some information about our proposed fiscal BDR. At the last meeting of this commission, I mentioned that the department receives a policy BDR and a fiscal BDR that we can submit. The deadline for the policy BDR has passed. However, the deadline for the fiscal BDR for the department is due September 1 as part of the budget building process. At this point, I have identified one proposed BDR for this department in terms of our fiscal activities. The proposal I have before this commission would request the following language be added to NRS 176-0133. This proposed language will assure that the funds for legislative pay for the legislative members on our commission come from the LCB budget and not from the department's budget. Early on in my appointment and in the activities of this commission, I interacted with the acting director at that time so that we could coordinate the best way to make sure the legislator pay got processed, because the statute was not clear about how that pay would be administered. And so he assisted me in making sure that was taken care of, and we've been working with them very closely to coordinate pay for the legislative members on our commission. I'd just like to mention too, if we were to request funding specifically for the department for this purpose, I think it could cause some potential conflicts. But if we add this language, we do not have to worry about that. And I want to let you know that I've already reached out to the newly appointed director of LCB, and I suggested my proposed language, and she is in support of this language as well, because it'll just ensure in the future that there won't be any question about how this legislative pay is administered. Thank you so much for indulging that report. I'd be happy to take any questions from the commission at the time at the pleasure of the chair if he would like me to.
Any questions for Ms. Gonzalez about her report? I have a couple of areas that we'll circle back to and ask the commission to discuss motions, since we're short on time and deadlines. But are there any questions about the subject matter that she's covered? All right, seeing none, let's begin where we left off. I support the director's request to modify the language in NRS 176.0133 and would entertain a motion from the commission to allow her to proceed with that department budget building modification. May I have a motion with respect to that request?
I'll make that motion, sir. Keith Logan.
Thank you, Sheriff. Is there a second?
John McCormick, I'll second.
Okay, any discussion on the motion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Is anyone opposed? I'd next like to circle back to the budget portion of the director's report, where she outlined her plan to deal with both the budget cuts and the realignment and enhancements. These were contained in the report, and particularly addressing the request that our AA4 be reclassified to a Management Analyst 1. I'd like to accept that portion of her report and entertain a motion authorizing her to proceed with the enhancements that she's outlined. Would anybody care to make a motion with respect to that?
Scott Freeman, so moved.
Thank you, Judge. Is there a second?
Darren Emley, second.
Thank you, Mr. Emley. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye, please.
Aye.
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 Is any commissioner opposed? All right, then that is passed. And then the other area that I think is worthwhile discussing from her report is the response to the correspondence and telephone calls. I don't think this requires action by the commission unless commissioners feel differently about this. I am generally familiar with the responses that the director has been providing. I have encouraged her to handle this exactly the way she's chosen to do so. I think it's healthy for the sentencing to interact with the public as long as we refrain from legal advice and we're simply providing data. I think it's a service that's beneficial and hopefully will enhance input to the commission on policy issues that we might debate later on as we continue our work this year. Would anybody prefer to have this handled in a different manner?
This is Elizabeth Neighbors. I think what was described was very appropriate, and I would certainly support continuing that way.
Thank you, Dr. Neighbors. Anybody else want to comment on this?
This is Emily Salisbury. I agree too. Just in terms of keeping the dialogue with the public, it's critical and crucial. I do wonder if it's possible to direct folks to the appropriate party or the appropriate commission or legislative body. I think there is naturally a lot of confusion about what our role is, and so maybe having a standard form, and maybe that's part of your form letter already, but I think giving people direction about where to use their voice and their advocacy is also important.
Want to comment on that, Director?
Yes, for the record, Victoria Gonzalez. Thank you, Dr. Salisbury. I appreciate that comment. That is something I've thought about. I didn't want to go too far as giving that sort of direction, but that has been my experience as well as I talk to individuals and read their letters. They're just not sure where to go. And I can tell how appreciative they are just to have somebody answer their phone call or their letter and direct them. Even if I have to tell them I don't know or there's nothing I can do, they're just happy to know. But I'm happy to enhance our response in terms of encouraging them to continue to write letters and then encouraging them to direct the process as far as which commissions or public bodies to reach out to, and then how the process works and to participate with the legislature. Because I predict, especially with the upcoming potential special session and then with our special session, we're going to get a lot more questions about what a bill says, what proposed amendments are out there, what a law says in the existing way. And so I think what you're saying would be right in line with that to address those questions that I think we're just going to get more of. And so I'm happy to have the department act as that resource that's a resource for resources in terms of how to get their voices heard in the process.
Thank you. Any other comments, suggestions, or questions for the director about communicating with the public or responding to letters and phone calls? I don't have a good answer for her about how she guards herself against oral communication on phone calls. That's just a risk we all accept, I guess, in communicating with the public. But I think we can all see from the director's demeanor and her attention to detail that I'm not too worried about that personally. I'm really proud of her and the work she and Sherry have done. Any other comments or questions about the director's report? Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Director. Let's move on to agenda item number 5 then. The primary focus of today's meeting is the presentation and possible action of the draft report that's due to the legislature on August 1. As you'll recall from our meeting on June 24th, Victoria provided some information regarding a proposed methodology for the report, the projected amount of costs avoided, which must be submitted by August 1 to the governor and the director of the Legislative Council Bureau. At our meeting on June 24th, the commission approved unanimously an outline for the director to use in drafting the report, and she has done a terrific job, in my judgment, in preparing the draft for us to look at today. I believe the draft was circulated last Friday, and it's part of our meeting materials. So without further ado, Victoria, if you would proceed to give an overview of the draft, and then we can entertain any questions about the draft, and then specifically focus in one area where we'll solicit input from the members of the commission.
Excellent. Thank you, Justice Hardesty, and thank you again to the commission. I'm going to take the higher view of the report, as I know you've all had time to review it, and I really am looking forward to inviting whatever response you have as far as the direction we want to go in. So I'll just give you some background about how I got here with the report, as some of you already know based on our meeting from June 24th in our process. As you recall, at the June 24th meeting, at the request of Justice Hardesty, I solicited comments from this commission before I even began the draft. I heard back from a few members of the commission. I thank you very much for your thoughtful comments. I wanted you to see a draft of the report before I specifically address any of those, so you could see how those comments may or may not be applicable to the format and the content of report, and we could decide how, the commission can decide how it wants to move forward. In advance of writing, I also had a very informative meeting with Director Daniels and his staff to discuss certain issues relating to the assessing costs with operating each facility of NDOC, as we discussed at the June 24 meeting. I will also note that through the writing process, the outline I developed evolved. I reviewed justice reinvestment reports from other states. I consulted with staff from CJI, and I also consulted with the chair. And so if you look at the table of contents, the big sections are laid out as such. There's a background section. And then I renamed the next section in considerations in developing a methodology, and I laid out the statutory requirements, the fact that we did not have a prescribed methodology, that this commission considered information related to the statement of amount of cost avoided, which is a separate report that this commission is going to submit on December 1. I mentioned the discussion of the prison population projections, the methodology from 2018. A lot of this was the information I presented to this commission at the June 24 meeting. I also tried to incorporate some of the information I learned from NDOC. The amount of detail we want to go into this report, I wasn't quite sure. And also this report is very early on in the deliverables of this, of not only this commission, but the enactment of AB 236. We're very early on in the process. And so I appreciate that right now we're just setting up the methodology and the procedure. And so I hope that in the future, I will be interacting with NDOC before I even start drafting, as we talk about what kinds of things will be included in this report. The last section of the report, Guiding Principles and Priorities for Investment, is largely from the statute that requires the report. I did not depart from the statutory language because I did not want to mischaracterize the intent of this commission in terms of recommendations. That statutory language is pretty direct, and I think it's pretty clear. And so while that language isn't very flowery in that part of the report, I just thought it best to stick with that until the commission, we get more data, number one, and until this commission decides what direction we'd like to go in. And we could that's an area of the report that definitely this commission could discuss, and we could play with more now and in the future. In terms of that, I wasn't going to go through the report in any more detail, but I'd be happy to turn the time back to the chair and in terms of how he would like to proceed, and happy to answer any questions or any comments.
Sure. Let's, I think the most productive thing to do would be to request from commissioners any edits that they may suggest to the report, be they substantive or otherwise. We will turn to page 10 of the report in a moment, but I'd like to first address whether folks have any edits or comments that they'd like to offer for Victoria's consideration. Do any commissioners have any edits or comments to the report? All right, let's turn, if you will, to page 10 And actually page 9, and then we'll go over to page 10. You may recall from a review of the JFA report, which set up the projections for a number of things contained in the report, as well as the report that was used by the legislature in establishing the baseline for AB 236, that there have been a number of unexpected decreases in new court commitments from June 2019 through January of 2020. And JFA has offered some suggestions or observations, but it's not clear whether this is really a trend. What I wanted to make sure is that the commissioners had an opportunity to offer their own suggestions on page 10 as to what might be potential reasons for the decline in commitments during that 6-month period. And actually, I think that probably has continued through the end of the fiscal year as well. So I wanted to make sure that your opinions and your thoughts were cataloged in the report if you wanted to make any suggestions. I know that in the past, Vice Chair Callaway has been very successful in monitoring these areas. And so, Chuck, if you have anything you'd like to mention in particular, that would be terrific, or any commissioner. So I'll open it up for that discussion and see if anybody would like to make any suggestions to that area. Vice Chair Callaway, do you mind if we start with you?
Thanks, Justice Hardesty. From reading the draft, I think I've made my concerns in the past known, and I think it's something that it's a work in progress moving forward. I know Director Gonzalez has done a lot to listen to my concerns, and my primary concern is that when we look at the cost savings or the cost projections, that we're also taking into account impact to local jurisdictions, jails, and impact that may be perceived at one end to be a savings, but it's more of a diversion rather than a savings, and that's always been my primary concern as we look at this. So I'm optimistic moving forward that we can evaluate that based on the data and determine if it's cost savings or cost diversion.
Chuck, do you feel the report adequately conveys that concern?
Yes, Your Honor. I believe it does at this point. Again, I think it's a work in progress, and I think it's difficult at this early stage of the game when AB 236 has just passed, and we're not sure how that's going to impact crime numbers or impact arrest numbers and jail population, and then throw the whole COVID stuff into the mix, obviously, how that impacts. Again, I think we're going to need to make sure that when we see, for example, just hypothetically, we see a decrease next year in overall crime, or we see an increase in overall crime, what's the cause? Is it the changes made in AB 236, or is it COVID, or is it a variety of other social issues out there that have caused an impact on crime in general, which then results in costs or savings? So I don't think we're going to get it perfect in this draft at this point, but I'm optimistic again that moving forward we can look and address those areas.
Great, thank you, Chuck. Anything else you wanted to add?
No, sir. I think that's where I'm at this point.
Okay. Any commissioner can make whatever comments they like. I was focused on page 10, but just invite any comments to that page or suggestions that you may want to add relating to the decline that has taken place in the prison population so far, or any other aspect of the report. Any comments anyone would like to offer?
Ann Carpenter, for the record, on page 10, we talk about decreasing recidivism. And what is that definition for this group?
My understanding is that it's the recidivism definition that was used by NDOC. And I think to be consistent, at least I've been operating under the understanding that that would be the definition that we would use to maintain consistency in the recording of data and following that. I believe that's consistent with your department as well, correct?
That is not correct. Our definition is different.
Okay, let's address that, probably in a footnote. And frankly, it's something that this commission needs to reconcile, I think. So while we're on the record, Chief Carpenter, do you mind, your definition is what? And then we'll get the NDOC definition.
Loosely, our definition, parole and probation doesn't take into consideration the time that a parolee or probationer is on or under our supervision. So we wait until the probationer or parolee has been discharged, and once they've been discharged from supervision, then it's 3 years after that.
Great. Director, what is NDOC's definition, just for the record?
For the record, this is Director Daniels. Let me get back with that. I believe we have that written somewhere. I want to give you an accurate depiction of how we define it.
That'd be great, Director. I appreciate that, and we'll make sure a footnote goes into the report that recognizes the differences between the two departments. By the way, while we're at it, Director Daniels, I want to thank you and your staff for your assistance and cooperation with Director Gonzalez in her workup on this matter. I really appreciate it.
Sir, for the record, Executive Director Gonzalez has been awesome. She's tremendous. For the record, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or edits to the draft report? And I'm sorry, Chief Carpenter, was that the extent of what you wanted to raise, or did you have something else you were going to comment about?
And Carpenter, for the record, no, that's all. Thank you.
Your Honor, this is Elizabeth Neighbors.
Yes.
In regard to the definitions of recidivism, I also think it might be helpful if the behavioral health system also has a similar definition, given that the forensic hospitals also deal with this issue and attempting to treat folks in regard to not reoffending. I don't know that our definition is consistent with the Department of Corrections or Parole and Probation, but it might be good to bring them all in line.
That's a great point, Doctor. I remember, I think you're right. Would you mind sending an email to Victoria to discuss, to include that in the footnote discussing this subject?
Yes, I would be delighted to do that.
Great. And by the way, just as an aside, could I ask Chief Carpenter to send an email, and Director Daniels when he sends his, could you please identify the rationale for the definition you use? Because the underlying rationale is pretty important with respect to these differences. Any other comments or edits to the report? From my own perspective, the math challenge that I think is going to occur is how we compare savings, or as Chuck would characterize them in some instances, diversions, when you look at page 11. When the legislature makes the cuts that they made to the Nevada Department of Corrections, that is separate, independent, and its causal relationship is different than the impacts created by AB 236. So going forward, I had asked Victoria to make sure that this was included in the report because we need to compare apples to apples as we work forward in assessing AB 236 impacts and not have that adjusted by the cuts that were made in the session. At least that's my view. I trust other members of the commission would share that point of view. Okay, any other comments or questions about the report? I won't belabor this point any longer. My question is whether, with the footnote addition, there are any other comments. If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the report as drafted and with that edit and forward it to the governor and LCB on August the 1st.
Scott Freeman, so moved.
Thank you, Judge. Is there a second?
Elizabeth Neighbors, second.
Thank you, Dr. Neighbors. Any discussion on the motion? Let's take a roll for this particular one.
Ms. Brady?
Yes.
Chief Carpenter?
Yes.
Director Daniels?
I'm sorry, this is Dan. I didn't hear the question. I apologize.
There's a motion before the commission to approve the draft of the report in addition with the footnotes that have been suggested for defining recidivism.
Approved.
Thank you. Chairman DeRico?
Yes.
Judge Freeman?
Vote yes.
Mr. Imlay?
Yes.
Sheriff Logan?
Yes.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Mr. McCormick?
Yes.
Ms. Moll?
Yes.
Dr. Neighbors?
Yes.
Dr. Southbury?
Yes.
Senator Cannizzaro?
Yes.
Vice Chair Callaway?
Yes.
And Chair Hardesty?
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. The motion passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you. With that said, once again, thank you, Victoria and Sherry, for your extraordinary work in compiling our first report. Really appreciate it. Let's move to item number 6 on the agenda. We have some outstanding subawards dollars. And so, as you know, on April 29th, Ms. Straight from CJI provided an update on the status of subawards. Happy to report that CJI informed me and Director Gonzalez last week that the Bureau of Justice Assistance approved those requests, and CJI is now working on the subcontracts for those requests, and it's in the process of funding them. So we should see dollars very soon. The commission also, and the commission had approved the submitted requests for parole and probation, post, and NDOC. At our meeting on June 24th, Ms. Straight informed the commission that there were remaining funds. So I asked Victoria to solicit additional requests for funding. The commission has 4 additional requests today. So I'll turn to Ms. Straight to provide some more information and update and walk the commission through the new requests. We've also representatives from each agency which requested the funds, and they're available to answer questions concerning their requests. Ms. Straight, would you like to proceed?
Thank you. Yes. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. For the record, this is Abigail Straight. As the Justice Hardesty was just saying, the Bureau of Justice Assistance made a total of $428,000 in subaward funding available to Nevada. At the April meeting of the Sentencing Commission, the Commission approved applications from the Department of Corrections, Parole and Probation, and the Commission on Peace Officer Standards and Training. That request totaled $298,500.88. As the chair just described, that application was approved by BJA. They approved that amount in full, which is, we are very thankful to them for their quick approval of this request. We are now working with each of those agencies to draw up subcontracts so they can begin spending down those funds. That leaves an additional $129,499.12 remaining for additional requests. The Department of Sentencing Policy received a revised request from the Washoe County District Attorney's Office, and as well as 3 new requests from the Department of Sentencing Policy, the Division of Parole and Probation, and the Department of Public and Behavioral Health. The total of those requests is $210,798, which exceeds the total amount available by $81,298.88. You should all have received the full applications in your meeting materials, but I'll quickly provide an overview of each request now. And as the chair mentioned, there's a representative from each agency present to answer any questions you may have about the specifics of each request. And there'll be time for those questions after I have finished my overview right now. So first, the Washoe County District Attorney's Office. At the request of the Sentencing Commission at the meeting on April 29th, the District Attorney's Office revised their original application for subaward funding. The office is now requesting $57,760 for an AB 236 implementation coordinator. That position would run from October 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2021. This would not be a full-time county employee, but rather would be a contractor brought in through a staffing company. And that coordinator would perform 3 main duties. First, develop training materials and presentations related to the enactment of AB 236 for attorneys, allowing for remote access. Second, work with information technology and support staff to make necessary changes to auto-generated documents, such as charging documents, to ensure the documents are updated to comply with the changes in AB 236. And then finally, identify AB 236 data collection needs and work with attorneys, support staff, and IT staff to develop methods for collecting data related to recidivism reduction, offense rates, and diversion outcomes. And the coordinator would analyze that data and prepare visuals and other written materials, including quarterly reports and an annual report. That's that request. Second in your packet of materials should be the Department of Sentencing Policy's request. The department is requesting $67,812 to fill a staff attorney position from October 1st, 2020 through March 1st, 2021. The department was originally appropriated for staff to carry out the existing statutory duties of the Sentencing Commission and duties concerning AB 236. However, due to the state's current budget constraints, the department will not have funds available in its budget to hire the staff attorney position until March 1st, 2021. Since the department is newly created, the staff attorney position would offer support to establish a strong infrastructure to carry out the mandates required to fully implement AB 236. And the staff attorney would perform 3 main duties. First, assist with data collection required pursuant to AB 236. Second, assist in the writing of the reports required by AB 236. Third, provide staff support to the Local Justice Reinvestment Coordinating Council. And this funding would allow the department to hire the staff attorney starting this October instead of needing to wait to fill the position until March of 2021. Second request, the third request is from the Division of Parole and Probation. MPP is requesting $18,600 for improvements to the equipment available to officers in the field. These funds would allow MPP to purchase 300 car adapters so officers may charge their laptops in their cars while they are working in the field. Officers typically work 10-hour shifts in the field, but the current battery life of their laptops is between 2 to 4 hours, which impedes the officer's ability to work effectively in the field. And the new chargers requested would allow officers to work more efficiently without worrying about running out of battery on their computers while on their shift. And then the final request is from the Division of Public and Behavioral Health, which is requesting $35,000 to institute a cognitive behavioral treatment program at the Lakes Crossing Center, Nevada's maximum security forensic hospital. This program would be designed for individuals with impairments in impulse control, emotional regulation, interpersonal relations, and who demonstrate criminogenic thinking patterns. Lakes Crossing Center treats clients with a multidisciplinary team to address mental health needs, but the center currently lacks the resources to address the client's criminogenic needs. Cognitive behavioral therapy programs have been proven effective at addressing these needs, so the Lakes Crossing Center would like to implement one of those programs. And the funding requested would allow the division to hire a clinical coordinator to develop the program and provide facilitator training and equipment to implement the CBT program. So that's my overview of the requests received by the department. Once again, these requests total $210,798. However, the total amount of funding that remains available to Nevada is $129,499.12. I will now turn it back to Justice Hardesty for the remainder of this agenda item.
So obviously open to however commissioners would like to proceed, but I was going to make a couple of suggestions. One is that the Department of Sentencing Policy, our own staff, I think is a serious priority given the budget cuts. What I was going to suggest, though, is that maybe we adjust that number by adjusting the period of time. So instead of from October 1 to March 1, perhaps it would be December 1 to March 1, which would make some space for additional appropriations. Does anybody have any questions for any of the presenters here or requesters?
Yeah, this is Russ Marsh.
Yes, sir, Mr. Marsh.
Justice Hardesty or Director Gonzalez, I have questions about the P&P request and also the other one regarding how that fits with the purpose behind the funding that we've received. Obviously, the one for ourselves does, but I'm just not sure. And believe me, I love P&P. I'm sure you wouldn't ask for the money if you didn't need it, but I'm not sure how extending battery life fits with the type of requests that we've gotten previously on this or the purpose of the funding. That's all.
Chief, would you like to respond, or do you have a staff member that can respond?
I have someone on staff to respond, but for this particular question, I understand what Mr. Marsh is saying. I think parole and probation in this area went about it differently. We too have had extensive cuts. I think I have to keep 95 positions unfilled for a long time. So instead of asking for more bodies to fill, we decided to utilize our bodies that are in the field more efficiently. So I hope that answers the question to Mr. Marsh.
It does.
And I believe, Mr. Marsh, you had a question. Was it about the request from the Division of Public and Behavioral Health, or was it the district?
Yes, it was the same question.
Dr. Neighbors, would you like to respond?
Sure. Well, as everybody's aware, the forensic hospitals in the state kind of sit at the cusp of the criminal justice system between the prison, the community, detention centers, and we're looking at an opportunity which we have actually looked at for a long time to try to address the criminogenic thinking, which there's a fair amount of literature that supports that if you treat mental health systems, it's not enough to reduce recidivism, that you have to add this second piece. And we thought that this would be an opportunity to add that to the program, to develop a pilot program with this model, which has been established nationally, also has versions, corrections, as well as community offenders that are in the community, either on parole and probation or conditional release. but this would be an opportune juncture at which to intervene and add this piece, which hopefully would reduce recidivism that we could track on a 3 to 5 year basis after we've made that intervention, as well as make ourselves available once we have the training and the model established to other criminal justice agencies as this reinvestment project goes forward. So that's how we felt that it fit within the goals of the Justice Reinvestment Initiative.
Dr. Neighbors, would this number be reduced, I assume it would be, if the start date changed from September 1st to December 1st, as we are suggesting for the department?
Yes, it would, because it's largely the biggest piece of this is the staff to coordinate, oversee, and implement the program. We really wanted a contractor who would focus, pretty much solely on implementing this program, and had an LCSW potentially that we would look at bringing in, who's familiar with the system, who could implement it.
And would the number change? I assume it would, if instead of the end date it was September 1, it was the fiscal year of June 30.
Yes, that would reduce the salary amount.
Sure. Commission, I know this is challenging for all of us, but I have a suggestion I'd like to make. I think if we adjust the dates, even including, we had already made the request of the district attorney's office to adjust their dates, we could also adjust their start date. I think in doing so, we could accommodate all of the requests that we have received. What I'm asking is if the commission will give the director the authority to approve all of these requests, but with changed start dates, with the exception of the Division of Parole and Probation, which is kind of a hard cost thing and is not affected by the start date. So that request would be approved in full, but the other requests would be further adjusted by the start date. Ms. Straight, would that, could we get that accomplished in that manner? I understand without getting into the numbers, but I want to give the director the authority to do this, revise these sub-award requests based on the start dates, and try to fit them all within the 129,000 plus that we have.
Yes, this is Abigail Straight for the record. Yes, I believe that would work, not knowing the exact numbers, but I believe it should. I also realized that I did my math wrong earlier, so I need to correct myself. The actual total of all of the requests currently would be $179,172. So over the amount available by less of an amount than I originally stated. Given that, I think with the changes you're proposing, again, depending on the exact amounts, that feels more reasonable to me, like that could work.
Dr. Neighbors, would that be okay with you if we worked with you on a adjusted start date? It might be November 1st instead of December 1st.
Yes, we just appreciate your consideration and would be thrilled to be able to implement this.
And I'm not sure who's on the phone for the DA's office, probably
Ms. Noble and Ms. Freilich.
Ms. Noble, Ms. Freilich, are you with us?
Yes, this is
good
Ms.
morning,
Freilich.
Justice Hardesty. Yes, this is Denny Noble and Lori Freilich from the Washoe County District Attorney's Office.
And would that approach be okay with you guys? I know we bumped you before, but we're trying to squeeze everybody in. Is that okay?
Absolutely. We really appreciate any consideration and any we can get. So we could adjust numbers as the Sentencing Commission requests.
Okay. So what I'd like to do then is approve the P&P request as submitted and give the executive director the authority to allocate the rest of the sub-award money from the other three requesters based upon their start or end date. May I have a motion with respect to that proposal if people are in agreement?
Judge Hardesty, Keith Logan for the record. Yes, I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Sheriff.
This is Christine Jones Brady. The motion.
Thank you, appreciate that. Any discussion on the motion?
This is Chris Tirico. I just have one discussion item on this. I would like to see if there was a way that the sentencing, Department of Sentencing Policy could work that out to have that attorney positions starting effective one with, cutbacks to those or sliding the dates back on the others, because I view that is such an important position. It is so much related to AB 236 and the limited staff that they have right now, that I think that would be absolutely impactful to Ms. Gonzalez and her one other coworker, that if there was a way we could get that one effective 10/1 and move the other one's dates back. I don't know what those numbers would look like, but that's just a thought of mine, that position is so critical to get her started on as soon as possible, and that's what I wanted to bring up.
I think it's a very good point, Chris, and there's one other option which I'd like to explore with legislative leadership, and that is the possibility that if we get a portion of this funded, maybe we could go to IFC and get the balance funded. It would be a relatively small amount, maybe $10,000, $15,000 in order to accomplish these objectives. So that I don't want to put Senator Canizero on the spot, so I'm not even going to ask her to comment, but it's something that I think is worth thinking about, because obviously this staff is really burdened with, two people. I've been praying that neither one of them get flu, let alone COVID. So anyway, we've got to keep them healthy. I've told Victoria I'm going to put her in a bubble. Anyway, any other discussions on the motion? All in favor say aye.
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 Anyone
Aye.
opposed?
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? All right, that motion passes. Then the next item on the agenda is topics for future meetings. As you know, our next meeting is October the 28th. We have a number of substantive areas that we have identified before. I'm certainly open to entertaining any suggestions from commissioners now, or you're welcome to submit emails to the executive director and me for consideration on our next agenda. Would any commissioner like to offer a suggestion or a comment on this topic? Okay, I'd like to use this opportunity also to request Director Daniels to give us an update on the COVID-19 testing and work that he's been doing at the prison on that particular subject. Director, are you still available and able to provide that report?
Yes, I am, Justice. Okay, so as of July 28th, NDOC has an offender population of 12,123 inmates. As most of you know, this number changes regularly, but right now we've got a range that's pretty tight. This number excludes pending transfers from local jurisdictions. Our testing numbers as of this morning are, in terms of offenders, we've tested 12,260. Which represents 99.9%, and that excludes our inmates that are at our contract facility in Arizona who are housed by the private company called Core Civic. Those of ours that have been tested here in our state, a total of 22 have tested positive, and that represents roughly 0.18% of all of our inmates. Of those 22, 4 were detected in general population, and the rest of them were identified in our intake units, and they are designed to be isolated, and those inmates are there for a minimum of 20 days. In terms of staff, we've tested 2,638, which represents 96% of our staff. We've had a total of 73 at some point in time who did test positive for a percentage of 2.76. Now, for our inmates that are in our private facility in Arizona, we have a total of 99 inmates there in house. Of those 99, 69 of those inmates tested positive. After they tested positive, we communicated with the leadership in Core Civic, and we are now engaged in monitoring those individuals from a security as well as a medical standpoint. We have procedures. They put in procedures that we consider to be adequate for what we're trying to accomplish. And in time, it'll be our goal to get those 99 inmates back to Nevada no later than December 31st, although we have a contract that exists through June 30th of 2021. I'll be more than happy to take any questions if you would like.
Any questions for the director based on his update?
This is Russ Marsh. Quick question. The personnel who test positive, what's your protocol when you have a positive test for a guard or another member of the prison personnel?
Thank you for your question. I will have Dr. Menev, my medical director, answer those questions. And thank you. My correctional officers are doing a great job, and we appreciate you asking.
Michael Menev, medical director. Individual staff members.
Oh, we can't. Whoever's speaking right now, we can't hear you.
Tracy.
Oh, we still can't hear you.
Our new policy now, all
Director, if your staff member is speaking, we're not able to hear that person.
or if they're
We can hear we can hear muffling, but we can't hear exactly what you're saying, just so you know. Like, we can tell you're talking, but we can't hear you, like what you're actually saying.
also in
It's Russ Marsh. I'm happy to withdraw my question at this point, and if NDOC is able to provide that information to the director, I'm sure she could pass it along to the commission.
I could do that at the pleasure of the chair.
Yes, of course.
Perfect. Okay, so thank you, Director Daniels. We can have that, send that information to me, and then I can send it out to the commission as a whole.
Any more comments on item 7? All right, let's turn to public comment, the final public comment section of the agenda. As before, we'll handle public comment in the same manner. I believe Ms. Glick has sent an email to us with one additional public comment, or actually 2, I guess.
There should be 14 and 15.
I saw 14, but in any event.
I just saw 15.
There's 2, okay. So that brings us to 15. Commission members, if you take a look at the 2 public comments that have been forwarded by Ms. Glick. Additional time to, does anybody need additional time to review the public comments? All right, we'll close the public comment period then, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Again, I'd like to express my personal thanks to Director Gonzalez and Ms. Glick for their extraordinary work on behalf of the commission. Thanks all of you for attending. Our next meeting will be October the 28th, and we'll proceed with additional agenda items at that time. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Scott Freeman, so moved.
Okay, is there a second?
McCormick, second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right, thank you all very much. Enjoy the rest of your week.
Bye, everyone. Okay, let me turn off all the buttons.
Bye, everyone. Have a good week.